Okay, hi. Well, today I'm going to talk about attribution style. This is one of the things you'll be graded on, and it's very important when you're writing any type of news story or press release. So the first thing you want to remember is just use the word said, S-A-I-D. Don't try to be fancy and use other words. You can use asked if it's appropriate, or yelled or shouted if it's appropriate. But don't use words like claimed, opined, uttered, things like that. It's just not done. It might seem boring to use said all the time, but that's actually correct. Okay, so the main thing with this handout is whether to say he said or said he. Do you say said Smith or Smith said? In general, you say Smith said, just like you would say he said and not said he. In general, you use the name and then the word said. There is an exception to this, and that is if there's a title or an explanation that comes after the name, you put the word said before the name. So you would say, said Smith, who grew up in Connecticut. Okay, let me show you some examples. Okay, so the first example is very simple. I love writing. Whoops. Okay, so the first example is, I love writing, she said. This is just when you have she or he, you always put she before the word said, or he before the word said. Never say said he or said she. Okay, now also notice that there are two quote marks on each side, and the comma is inside the quote mark. This is very important. The comma and the period always go inside the quote marks. Okay. Also notice that the words she said come after the quote. You never want to put the words she said before the quote. That's incorrect. Okay, so the next example is, I'm graduating and getting out of here, Miranda Robinson said. So here we have a name and the word said. So we don't have anything after the name. There's no title and no explanation. So in this case, the name would come before the word said. Miranda Robinson said. You would never say said Miranda Robinson in this case. That would be wrong. Okay, the third example is an exception to the rule. So you have the Montfort College of Business is the best business school in the nation, said Joe Alexander, comma, UNC Montfort College Dean. So his title comes after his name, so you would put said first. Remember, if something comes after the name, a title or an explanation, you always put the word said before the name. And a good way to remember this is that you always want the word said next to the name. You always want the word said next to the name. So you wouldn't want to have the name, then the title, and then the word said. Okay? All right, let's look at a couple more examples. Okay. The next example is the Kay Norton example. I will be glad when the school year is over, UNC President Kay Norton said. Now, I'm going back to the first, this is the regular rule where there's nothing after the name, so you put said last. The title, UNC President, comes before her name. If the title comes before her name, you would use the title, the name, and then the word said. It's only if something comes after the name that you put said first. And now notice this is a short title. Short titles can go before the name. A longer title would definitely go after the name. Just like the Ken Mont or the Joe Alexander reference, his title came after his name because it was a long title, 4 words. So if the title is more than 2 words, you probably should put it after the name. Okay, let's look at the last example. And this is another exception to the rule. Colorado is the most beautiful state in the country, said Jane Smith, who grew up in New York. So who grew up in New York is an explanation that comes after her name, so you want to put said first, because remember, we always want the name next to the word said. So it's said Jane Smith, who grew up in New York. Okay. You never want to have the name, the explanation, and then the word said. That's wrong. So use this this handout and download it, and if you need to check it, do that, because attribution is very important. You're going to be graded on it. It's going to come up in all your classes, so you always want to get this right, whether it's magazine writing or online writing or newspaper writing or in a press release. You always want to have it like this, even if you're writing fiction and you're doing conversation, dialogue. You want to do it this way. Okay, good. Well, thanks for listening. Hope you understood that. If you have questions, give me an email or stop by my office hours. Thanks. Bye.